Hi, guys. Oh,
Hello.
hello. You all okay? This is your worst weekend. Okay. Right? It's crazy, right? It's crazy. This is the worst. Then it just all gets better from here. Okay? I promise. I promise. Okay? I saw that there's some people having tech problems. Sorry, just admitting Julie. The best thing to do if you're having tech problems, speak to Taryn. Okay? She speak to her directly, and she will help you with whatever problem you've got. Okay? Because that video, it's so difficult for us to give you all a blanket way of doing things with that stupid video, because you've all got different equipment, you've all got different Wi-Fi, you've all got different everything. So if you are having difficulties getting it to Taryn or getting it onto Google Drive, speak to her, because she'll help you. Okay, so this session can be as short or as long as you want it to be. I've got a couple of things that I need to tell you, but we're already really quite far ahead with peak pose sequencing. So it's up to you. If you've got questions for me, then we'll carry on the session. Otherwise, we'll cut the session short, whatever the group kind of, whatever happens with the group, okay? So I just want to talk very, very briefly about the next stage of the peak pose sequencing, which is where you take your approved 16 poses or whatever it is, and you turn it into your full sequence, okay? So how you do that is exactly what is done in your course overview, okay? The exact examples there. So it's after your template. So that will be where you number your pose. Sorry, just admitting Hader. Where you number your poses, one, your example there is revolved half moon, one butterfly. You will then add your actions of the pose, your instructions, and you will add your transitions, okay, in different colors. I can't remember which one's which, but it says there in blue, it's blue and red, one's in blue and one is in red, okay? So it's to make it logical for you. So you start with your one pose, you give your instructions on how you're going to get the person, how the person is going to be in the pose. The examples are all there, and any action that you want them to do in the pose. So for example, you could think of something like supine bakasana, lying on your back crow. Now we could easily say lying on your back crow, but then if you want the people to push through with their hands, then we need you to tell us that, okay? So it's like, come and lie on your back. You don't even have to say that. You can just say, lie supine bakasana, okay? Draw your knees into your chest, release the hands, push through the arms, done. That's your action of your pose, okay? So it's not really about completely getting into the pose. So stuff like warrior two is a transition for most of you. You just say warrior two. I don't need to know, place your foot here, place your back foot there. Warrior two, windmill your arms, reverse warrior, plank, down dog. That's your transition, okay? So it's more, the instructions I'm looking for are more around the action of the pose, okay? What you want them to do in the pose. Because a lot of you, the people that have sent me their templates already, sorry, admitting Stefan, they have come up with, a lot of you have come up with quite good actions in your poses, like what are you doing in the pose? And it's not just normal. So for instance, it would be like doing eagle arms in warrior two, right? You've got a purpose for the eagle arms, but warrior two, there's no purpose. Do you know what I mean? It's like warrior two, eagle arm, wrap your arms around, lift the elbows up, draw your arms out, get a nice back stretch. that kind of information. Does that make sense? Okay, and I'm not looking for an exact science. It's, you know, I'm not looking for perfection. Just if your pose requires an action, like you've added in some side bending or cactus arms, that kind of thing, then tell me what the action is, what you want your client to do or your students to do. All right? Any questions on that? No? All good? All right? Okay. Second thing is transitions, right? All of the transitions, well, not all of them, but most of them are in your slides. Okay, there's example after example after example. You've also done a load of different transitions with Laura. Bev is coming on to see you tomorrow, Bev Slauk, and she is a modern vinyasa teacher. So she's trained with us as a 500-hour teacher, so she understands peak pose sequencing very well, but she teaches in the most popular hot yoga studios here in Cape Town, and they don't care about peak pose sequencing or anything like that. So they teach what a lot of you've experienced, which is just kind of throwing a whole load of poses together and more like a dance around the poses. So they are big on transitions, like getting you into poses in weird ways that you don't expect to get into. And Bev is going to give you a class tomorrow, and she's going to talk to you about modern vinyasa, how she puts things together, and a little bit about transitions as well. Okay, different ways to get into things. So that's a really good lecture for you to go, oh, okay, interesting, I can use this transition. Okay, and as I said ages ago now, it feels like, it's up to you. If you want to be a more slow vinyasa teacher, and you just want to do really basic transitions, do basic transitions. I had a meeting, not a meeting, a kind of friend meeting yesterday with one of my 500-hour teachers who's just opened a studio, a small studio. And she's hired Bev to go and work there, and a couple of other people. And she's got a couple of teachers that are more like Bev, where they're doing more flowy, choreographed stuff with no peak pose sequencing. And then Mandy, she's much more, she likes to teach more. So she wants to teach more peak pose sequencing stuff. So it's up to you. You can do what you want to do. If you go and work in a big studio out there, the studio is going to say to you, you teach like this. They're going to tell you how they want you to teach. Okay, very rarely can you go in and do whatever you want to do. They've got a mold that they want you to be part of, and they will say, no, you've got to flow around the mat. You're not allowed to teach any inversions. You're not allowed to teach back bend. You're not allowed to do this. And then you kind of work within that framework. So it's up to you. If you're fun and fast and you want to flow and do all the transition work, go for it. It's much harder to remember because you've got so many different tricky transitions, okay? Or you can be a more bog standard, kind of working much more within a peak pose. So where you're really doing the work is where in those poses that you've chosen. So they're quite hard and people are working there, and then you flow them a bit. But I am looking for some flow. Okay, so that's the point. I was chatting to Alicia. I don't know where she is. There you are. Okay, so Alicia's got an Iyengar background, and she's come. I'm hoping you guys will all share your sequences afterwards, because Alicia's sequence is brilliant. Okay, but she's done it mostly at the wall. It's handstand, and she's done it mostly at the wall, and come up with fabulous 16 poses, all done at the wall, all tricky stuff like boat pose at the wall, all sorts of stuff. It's brilliant. But the problem is then to add flow, it becomes complicated, because the minute you start adding flow, the measurement from the wall gets all complicated. So I've asked Alicia to do her full sequences if she's doing all of those poses in the middle of the room. Because what I want you to go away with from this course is the ability to peak pose sequence, but also to create vinyasa flow. Okay, they're two different skills. So you're going to go out there with more skill than a normal vinyasa class, which will just be, if you're in a vinyasa teacher training, you get given maybe 2 sequences, maybe even only 1 sequence. You learn that sequence, you teach that sequence, you take that sequence away. But very rarely do they have to learn how to sequence. And it's just flow. So they don't do all of those elements. But as a teacher, you need to be able to go, I can do, you know what, I can do a bit of kids yoga, I can do a bit of hatha yoga, I can do a bit of vinyasa flow, I can understand how to peak pose sequence, I can break things down. So this is the tools around that. So it has to be a vinyasa flow. It can't just be a hatha style where you just stand at the front of the mat and then do like something else, stand at the front of the mat. So I need transitions in the pose, okay? The most important thing, guys, and this is the thing that takes the time, you need to time it, okay? If normally I can see very quickly if you haven't timed it, and I can guess pretty much, and it often happens. When people don't time it, you give me a 30-minute sequence. I need it to be a 60-minute sequence, okay? That includes your cool down, your shavasana at the end. If you've got a warm up in the beginning, depending on what you're going to do, it's got to be 60 minutes long. So when you write it up, do it in real time. And I promise you, when you do it in real time, it's going to annoy the hell out of you because it's going to feel so slow and annoying and you just want to do it quickly. But as beginner teachers, you're not going to know how long it is without doing it. You'll estimate and I can guarantee you'll be wrong, okay? And then I'm going to say to you, go do it again, it's not long enough, which means you're just going to have to do a whole heap more work. So really do your actions, do your transitions, and kind of teach it, which will be great because then you can actually go and teach it later. You know, teach it, move yourself. Hold 4, 5 breaths. It's so easy to do it fast when you're preparing, okay? So that's that, around that. Okay, are there any questions around the transitions, around the action, anything that I've just talked about?
I have a question, Catherine. In terms of timing it, is it better to time each kind of section, or do we put together most of the plan and then do it all and see what the full time is and try and tweak things? Or do we do like pose by pose with each transition, time each of those? And what's the best way to do that?
I think it's entirely up to you. It's how you work. Okay, some people like to work sectionally, and then I would do exactly that, time, and then just make sure you connect. You know, you can time each pose and its transition, and then add it all up at the end, which is probably, so I'm just going to admit Fiona, okay, which is also quite a good way of doing it because then you can actually see, hey, hang on a second, that one section is like 30 seconds, or that one section's 7 minutes. So it's probably quite a good way of knowing where you need to adjust. I've said to a few of you that have handed in your templates already, is that you can come up with a pose, say a lying pose, like reclined forward bend thingy, out to the side, but that will take 30 seconds. So if you're lying somebody down on their back and you'd go, whoa, 30 seconds, and in fact, that's a lot. It might not even be a whole minute to do that. You can't have somebody lying on their back for just 1 minute and then up. It's pointless. Why do it? You know. So if you want them lying on their back, you've got to do some other stuff there. So you can either add another pose, or you can do some funky kind of transitions down there. So you could do, I can't remember who it was, Fiona, I think, I'm not sure, was doing Ekapada Kundiyasana 1, so twisted crow with your legs out. Now you can go down and do your hamstring stretches there, but then you can also add, bend your knees in, do some oblique work to the side, legs up again, stretch them out again to the side, and then knees in, more twist back, stretch them out again to the side. This time, let go of your foot, lift up with your arms straight, stretch out, so you bulk up the pose. Does that make sense? Because you know that you don't go, well, sometimes you don't really go into a yoga class and sort of do like, I'm just going to stretch that, I'll stretch that, done. You know, the idea is that you get creative around it and funk it up a little bit. So you can think about different versions of that pose that you've chosen when you're lying on your back, and then add bits so it bulks up, because you really don't want people just sitting there on their back for like not even a minute. It's not very long, you know, it's kind of jarring in your flow. And it would be the same thing with seated. If you come up and you do something like Janu Sirsasana, so don't know what it's called, leg out straight and your one leg is bent in. If you just did this, fold forward, back up, swap legs, fold forward, come to standing, it's pointless. It's like you need to either repeat, but repeat slightly differently, because, or do other poses where you are seated. Okay, so that's, you've got to bulk up your sections a little bit, or scrap them if they don't work. But I've pretty much advised most of you that have sent in already that you're going to need to add things around that section. And pretty much that's more to do with warming up, because if you go one stretch, you're not warming anything up. Same thing in Janu Sirsasana, one, it's not doing anything. You need to do more. And it's also about the flow of the sequence of getting your people like lying on their back for a minute, then they're sitting for a minute. It's like, what's going on? You know, it's not nice. They need to have a little bit longer in that area. Does that make a little bit of sense? So Candice's suggestion to record each section bit by bit, it's probably going to really show you, hey. And then I would advise that you actually physically connect your sections. So you need to, it's so easy to go, squat, do this, connect to the next thing. But if you don't do it yourself, you won't feel, because you're new teachers, you won't feel how jarring it is. Okay, so you need to connect and move your body and go, okay, that works perfectly. Because I can well, not normally always, I can just see when you haven't done it yourself, because it doesn't work. You know, it's like, well, how did you get there to the back of the mat? That's really jarring, feels odd. So you do have to do your transitions as well, just feeling in your body. And what I want to say is, for years, I taught an advanced yoga class for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And I had all the teachers, the 500-hour teachers, they were all just crazy good practitioners, all of those things. And every week I would come up with a different peak pose to work on, something tricky and difficult. And what took me the longest to put together were the transitions. Okay, that's what took, it's like I would want them to do something quite funky in a pose. Myleen's been doing it, Mayurasana, which is peacock pose, arm balance. And I would want them to position their arms in the right place, but I'd have to make it flow. You know, it was more workshopy, but I'd have to make it a flow. Like, how do I do that and then get them to the next place that's fun and works, rather than just go, okay, guys, put your arms here. It's the transition. So I'd be on my mat, even after, I don't even know how long I've been teaching, even after, especially that advanced class, kind of trying to work, how can I get from that place that I want them to be to the next place? Okay? Because the stuff was unusual. So like, if you ask all of my teachers that I have trained, by 500-hour teachers, and you ask them what is my worst pose, reverse warrior is my worst pose, because I think it's useless. So I never do transitions normally. Like, I don't do that warrior to reverse, try all of those things there. And now star, goddess, star, that stuff's waste of time when you're doing advanced sequencing. So I would have to really think about how I get to the next particular pose. So know that it does take a long time, but you've got, for your stuff, you've got all these different ways of getting into the pose, okay? So use all the transitions that are listed and see how you go with that. Okay, Julie.
I just wanted to ask, I'm just interested to know, can you give us an example of a transition that you might have used in that kind of class that maybe we wouldn't have encountered in our like vinyasa experience?
Okay, I'm like a crazy person. So when it comes to yoga, so it's quite difficult. I probably have to video stuff for you. So I would do, if you follow me on Instagram, you will see it. I would do stuff where they would be walking back onto the wall and transition on the wall. Those kind of things, like completely crazy ways, strong, fun ways of getting into things. So not really. So for instance, who's teaching Ekapada Kundiyasana 1? Fiona or Julie? Who's teaching it? I'm not teaching it, one of pose analysis. I can't remember who's doing it. But so I would teach them that, but I wouldn't teach them to come into it from Utkatasana, from chair, which is where you come into it. I would teach them to come into it from like crazy forward bends or inversions or those kind of things. So like really thinking out of the box on how to get into things. Because remember, these people are the advanced level. You know, I would be thinking, okay, you know what, can you do Ekapada Kundiyasana 1, which is twisted crow with your legs straight? Can we do it from seated, like sitting down? Can we do it from lying down? Can we do it from headstand? Etc. So the whole thing would be the one pose, but it would be finding crazy ways to get into the pose. Kind of fun, but really, it nearly killed me, that advanced class, because it took me, even at my level of teaching. So I could come in and teach you guys, Laura can too. If you said to me, we'd like to do Firefly, whatever, I wouldn't have to plan a sequence. I could just do it like right off and just teach you guys and do the flow and whatever, and not from memory, just making it up as I go along. But that's years of practice. But this advanced class, I couldn't do that because all of the teachers were really high standard and they know stuff. So I'd have to come up with new stuff every week, and it would take me one whole day to prepare for a 90-minute class for years. And then I said, I'm stopping. It's too much work for one class. But you guys are going to be at that level where you are, it's going to take you a day to prepare a sequence. Okay, that's how you start. Okay, so someone like Bev, she teaches luckily at lots of different studios. So what she does is she prepares one class for the week, one class. And then she goes to lots of different studios and teaches that one class. But it's a real problem if you're teaching 3 or 4 times at a studio, right? So then you have to be a little bit more creative. We'll talk about that towards the end of things. But Laura and I, just as an aside, Laura and I are putting together for the website membership, we're putting together so many peak pose sequences that we've taught before. So hopefully, you know, it's going to take us a while to get them all up, but hopefully you'll be able to log in and go, look, I feel like teaching that, or that's for elderly people, I feel like teaching that, and that will help you with sequencing, because it's so time consuming. Okay, any other questions? Melissa?
Catherine, I wanted to ask, like, how many transition poses are too much between your poses?
To me, there is too much if you can't do all your poses. Okay, you need to do your poses are more important than transitions, and depending on what you're doing in your poses will depend on how much time you've got for your transition. Okay, so if you're coming into standing splits, for example, standing splits, right leg, and you're simply just doing it as a hamstring pose, and then you're going to move somehow to standing splits on the other side. Your standing splits on your right leg will take you what? 5 seconds, 10, if you're really holding them there. But if you're doing standing splits and your peak pose is something like dancers, and you go, actually, I'm in standing splits, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back, I'm going to bend the top leg, I'm going to reach back and hold it, but your standing split section becomes longer, right? So then you would have less time for transitions. So there is no too much, it's literally to do with how much time. What you can do really easily is, depending on, you can actually record your sections before your transitions. Okay, you can do that. It's a bit time consuming, but you can. You can go, okay, this section took me a minute, this is 2 minutes, this is 3 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Shavasana is 5 minutes. My cool down, do your cool down, work it out. My cool down is 5 or 10 minutes, okay? So you've got 15 minutes there, so you've only got 45 minutes. Then you've got your poses and all the stuff that you're going to do in your poses, and it's totally different, depending, all of your sequences so far are completely different. So say in your poses, it's, say it's a minute per pose, that's say 15 minutes, all right? So we're already half an hour, right? Minimum. Then you've got your peak pose section, and if you're doing handstand, then you're going to be at the wall. That's another 10 minutes. That's, you were talking 40 minutes, it's gone. So then you know that your transitions are 20 minutes max, and that per section, they're probably about a minute and a bit. Okay, but you'd be surprised. We move quickly, right? So you can do quite a lot of transitions, most of you. But the only way of knowing is to actually time it, and it really is dependent on your, what is your peak pose, Melissa?
I can't say it, but it's the one before Titivasana, the where your legs are big.
Yes. I saw it, that Bujapidasana. Right. So Bujapidasana, you'd be looking at, say 15 to 20 minutes of cool down, say 15 minutes for cool down in Shavasana. You'd be looking at, in your peak pose modifications, that's about 5 minutes, 20 minutes. And then you've got your poses in between. So say 15 poses, 15 or 20 minutes. And then so you've got quite a lot of room for a lengthy transition. Again, it depends as well. I personally, and this is no, I don't care if you do it or not, I personally like to repeat things. So not repeat exactly, but say standing splits, I would be repeating standing splits, and I'd be doing different things in standing splits. So rather than, so I would do standing splits 3 times on each leg, but I would do different things. I would do one where you just standing splits, some transition back to the other side, standing split, back to the other transition, back to standing splits, maybe hold your bottom leg, so don't touch the floor. Transition back to standing splits again, float your arms off the ground, float down, hands down, kick up high, back into downward dog, standing splits. So it would bulk up with that. Whereas if you're just doing standing splits once, then you're going to have a lot more room for transition. Like, you know, I actually did, I don't know if I told you guys, I went and did, I told you I did my 500 hour with Jason Crandall in London years ago. And I went and did his sequencing course. Did I tell you this? No. Okay. So I bought stupidly, actually. I thought, maybe there is somebody out there that's actually come up with a really good way of sequencing, like creating a good sequencing template. So I actually signed up for his master yoga sequencing course, which was 3 or 4 days. I learned nothing. I honestly, it's such difficult stuff, this. To ask Bev tomorrow, it is time consuming. She said on one of the teacher trainings that she does a little bit of work on, they do a tiny bit of general sequencing, and she said that they don't get it, no one gets it right. It's all wrong. It's tricky stuff that you have to work through. But when you teach more and more and more and more and more, you're able to go, this is how I want to teach, first of all. You might want to be a Hot 26 teacher, then you don't have to remember anything. You just remember 26 poses and cues and you're done, right? Why not? Okay. Or you can be a modern vinyasa teacher like Bev and create 1 sequence a week. Or you're a peak pose sequencer and you break down poses. Maybe you do transition slowly. So you kind of get there, but it is the hardest thing to do. It really, really is. But you are leagues ahead of everybody else already with what you know, okay? So again, sorry, Melissa, I can't give you a fine-tuned answer. It depends on how you're gonna make your sequence, all right? It depends if you're, you know, how many childs, if you're doing like really strong things, are you gonna put child's pose in between? But even child's, I mean, we're in for what? 10 breaths, if you're lucky, you know. But you'll see, your transitions will bulk up, and then you can also repeat poses, which repeat poses and add something slightly different to each repeat. Also, you can do that. Sorry, again, not an exact, I wish I could give an exact answer. You know, Laura and I met last week to try and see if we can come up with a sequencing template, and we can't. The only thing is there's something called Tummy out there. I don't know if you've seen it. Tummee. And they've got, in my view, some of the crappiest sequences around ever, but they've got thousands of them. And it's fairly cheap to join. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's quite cheap. And they've got little characters that you can put a sequence together for yourself, but it doesn't help you with transitions. It's like doing your 16 poses and not even, and then you've got to put the transitions in. I actually asked Alicia, because she's done more drawings for her little sequence, and I said, can't you do a module for us where you teach us how to do that? And then Alicia says, well, I'm going to have to teach everybody to digitally draw. So you see what I mean? It's like, it's not easy. This stuff is tricky, but once you get past a certain point, if you want to change that, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to go, this week I'm teaching 5 classes, they're all at a different studio, I'll do one sequence. Next week, or I'm teaching at the same studio, this week I'm doing twists. I've got a beginner's class on Monday, I'm going to do Ida, Matsya, and Drastina, and maybe half revolved moon or something, or twisted crescent light. I've got an intermediate class on whatever. I'm going to do twists again, but maybe we're going to do a twisted arm balance. And you start kind of adding to your sequences, and then you get a big pile of them. And then it's how it goes. I mean, if we come up with something, we're going to give you sequences. So that's the best thing I think we could do for our teachers, is just have a membership site where you can log in and get a sequence if you need one, because we all need help. When we start yoga teaching, it's a big thing. Okay, any other questions? You all good? Okay, so then I'm going to let you go because you've got a lot of work, right? If you've got any questions about your sequencing, then just give me a shout, okay? I'm around for the whole weekend. And Bev's thing is quite useful as well, because you're going to see the vinyasa that she teaches is very transition based. So that's also going to be very helpful for you as well. And she's going to give you a sequence. So the sequence that she teaches you tomorrow, she'll give it to you, so you'll have another sequence, okay, to go out there and teach. Okay. Bye, guys. Good luck. Ask the teachers for help if you need it. Okay. All right. That's what we're there for. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.